As you recall in earlier training videos, I briefly introduced you to the autofill feature. Well, here it's all about autofill, so let's get started. The definition of autofill is that it's a quick way to copy the contents of a cell or a range of cells to adjacent cells. So if I come up here and I want to be able to copy that cell, I can only copy it to those cells that are adjacent to it, either up, down, left, or right. And to do that, just go ahead and hover over the bottom right-hand corner of the cell, that little green square, that when you hover over it, your white cross turns into a black cross. And we're not looking for the border of it because if you get a four-way arrow, that means you can move the contents, not the actual autofill handle. You got to get the black cross. When you see it in the lower right-hand corner of any cell or range of cells that you have selected, then you can go ahead and click and drag to the right as far as you want, or even drag it to the left, and we'll go that way, and it copies it there, or with that selection, drag it down, and it copies down below. Ooh, we're just getting crazy. Let's go ahead and hit undo several times to undo all that. And as you recall in earlier training videos, not only does it copy the contents of the cell, but if the contents involve a function or formula, it'll actually copy that as well. So you can see in cell C12, up in the formula bar, we've got the formula that's adding up all these cells, well, the cells for each employee that they made in the month of January. And we wanted to go ahead and copy and paste it over into the next column so it can use the same formula. And when I say same formula, I mean adding one cell to another, but not exactly the same, because if it was, then it would be adding, as you can see up in this formula, the contents of column C. So it'd be C7, C8. But when you use the autofill feature, it uses what are called the relative reference by default. And we talked about that in earlier training videos about absolute, relative, and mixed references. So you may want to watch that. But what the autofill does is that, let me go ahead and delete this, is that when I have a cell selected and I want to copy the contents, the formula without having to type it in here again, into the adjacent cell, again the lower right hand corner, get the black cross, click and drag it over and let go, and hey, does it copy the exact same formula? Not exactly where it copies the exact same reference, but it's relative to the new column that it's in. So when you look at this cell here to double click on it, that formula isn't referencing the same column, but it updates it to the new column that we copied it over into. And so it updates it from C's to D's, D7 through D10. Cool. Hit the escape key to get back out of that. So it'll copy the contents and also functions and formulas. So you don't have to type it in again. But there's a warning with that, because if you need to stop it from advancing from one column to the next, but you want it to reference the same column or same cell, again, I refer you back to my absolute, relative, and mixed reference training videos. But the purpose here of the autofill is to be able to copy and paste contents from one cell to adjacent cells. And a shortcut for using the autofill handle is that, let me delete this, is that if you have one that's in a column, you can hover over the lower right hand corner and double click really fast and it automatically fills it in for you. You don't have to click and drag it. Now that only works vertically, and by that I mean it works in a column from top to bottom. You can't go ahead and delete the contents above and then come down here and double click, because it's not going to zip back up above. But you can click and drag so it goes back up above. That works. And then you can double check to make sure it's referencing the totals here for this employee. Double click in the cell. It's got the range for that employee. Checks out. Hit enter. Now after you use the autofill handle, it'll show you additional options in the tag. For example, let me go ahead and change the formatting for the contents of the cell, lowest minimum, the minimum function, and come up here and add some color to it, make it bold, italics. And so if I go ahead and use the autofill feature for that cell by hovering over the lower right hand corner, clicking and dragging it down, automatically copies it right, but you also get the tag for the autofill options that you can click on to see if you want to tweak it. The default is to copy everything, or you can just say go ahead and fill formatting only. So if I do that, the formatting's there but not the contents. So if I type in something else, I get the same format as what it copied up above because that's what I chose. Let me go ahead and hit undo. So let's try it again. Click and drag it down and then click on the autofill options, and then if I do fill without formatting, it just copies the contents but it doesn't have the formatting tied to it. And then last but not least is the flash fill, which we'll talk about in the next training video. Let me go ahead and click off. Oh, and while we're here and discussing about copying things, you can use the shortcut key Control D if you want to copy the contents in the cell above. So in this cell, if you want to copy that, do Control D, it duplicates it. I can also do it to the formula up above, Control D, but then why am I doing that? Because when you double click on it, It doesn't do the entire range because it's a relative reference when I do that, and you can always click and drag to push it up and get the minimum, which is the same up above. But in any case, the point being is Control D will copy the contents in the cell above it. Let me go ahead and delete all that. It can also be used to copy objects and shapes, which we'll talk about in a later training video. And then finally, it can also recognize patterns and copy the range that you set. So for example, we've got January, February, March, and April. What if I want to continue on to May? Sound kooky? Well, let's take a look. Go ahead and select the range to give something for the autofill to think about, to create a pattern on. So if we hover over the bottom right-hand corner for the selected range and we click and drag and go over to the right, you can see before I let go of the mouse, you get the pop-up that says May, June, July, August. Hey, that's pretty cool, right? Let me hit undo. You don't even have to do it for all 4 months. You just got to give something for it to go off of that's logical. You can do it for March and April. Well, click and drag to select March and April. And then click and drag its autofill handle, and it can pick out, okay, you're going to March to April. Now we'll go to May to June. Let's go ahead and undo that. Other things you can do, as far as really simplistic, we did the copy one cell into the next by clicking and dragging it, going down, down, down. Let me hit undo. You can also give it patterns like 1, 2. What comes after 2? We'll select the first 2. That's the pattern that the autofill needs to go off of. So when you click and drag it down, it can go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or better yet, delete that. We can give it a kooky pattern, something a little bit more complex, maybe 1. Enter 3. What comes after 3? Well, let's let it figure it out. Select the 2 cells to identify a pattern, then click and drag the autofill. Cool. And then you can click on its autofill options again if you just want to copy the cells or do the fill series. So it's finding a series of going 1 to 3, from 3 to 5, 5 to 7. So in other words, it's advancing every 2. And then you can just do fill formatting, fill without formatting, and then again flash fill, which we'll talk about in the next training video. It's like autofill, but it's a little bit more nitty-gritty when it comes to looking for patterns. And then one last one. How about if we did Q1? Is that enough to go off of? Well, let's see. Q1 is for quarter 1, right? So autofill it, go all the way down. Hey, it knows that game. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 is 4 quarters in a year, and then it goes back to Q1. So again, there are some things that are automatically programmed into Excel. You just need to give it a little bit of a help to figure out what is you're trying to accomplish. And based typically upon a pattern that you can at least give it with 2 cells or more, it can do a pretty good job of figuring it out. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, as soon as I upload a new video, you'll be notified instantly, and you can do that by coming over here and clicking on my face. You can also click here to support me, so for $2 a month, you can have access to over 2,700 training videos, all ad-free, and for a few bucks more, you can have access to my exercises, instructor notes, quizzes, certificate of completion, and a whole lot more.